So some of you may remember a video I released at the end of last year called Games Reflections 2018. It was almost 40 minutes long, and it could have been done better, but whatever, I did it. This year I'm doing things a little different. This is part 1, where I'm discussing what games I beat in the first half of 2019. And at the end of the year, I'm going to be releasing part 2, which will cover games that I've beaten in the second half of the year. Basically, same rules as last year's Games Reflections. Scale of 1 to 10, have to have beaten the game for the first time this year. Games can have and probably have been released in years before 2019. That's basically it. So, let's get started. I never played a lot of Star Fox games in my years of gaming. That being said, as I play more and more of them, I'm slowly becoming more of a fan of the series. Star Fox Assault is fun. Sure, it's short, but it controls really well. As long as you uninvert the ground and tank controls first. You play as space pilot Fox McCloud as you take down the menace known as the Aperoids, as well as the occasional member of Team Starwolf. Whether on foot in the Landmaster or in the classic R-Wing, I had a pretty good time with the controls. It strays a bit from most of the Star Fox games by opting to have a straightforward set of missions rather than having branching paths concept. I know that may turn off a few hardcore fans of the series, but I do like it as it makes it less complicated to 100% the game. 8 out of 10. This game's main faults lie with the length of the game and the voice acting. Now, the game is quite short, but I feel like that's offset a bit by the amount of medals and flags to collect throughout the game. The voice acting, however, can't be justified. It just feels like the voice actors were extremely uninterested or bored throughout the game. That's a problem, seeing as they talk throughout the whole game, both during missions and in cutscenes. But aside from minor complaints, it's a pretty good game. If you know me, you know I love my RPGs, specifically turn-based RPGs. Square Enix is best known for Final Fantasy, one of the most popular franchises of the genre. And Octopath Traveler is a phenomenal return to the classic Final Fantasy formula with a few twists. You play as 8 characters on their own little journeys through the land of Orstera. For the most part, each of their own journeys is their own, not really intertwining with each other. I've heard a lot of complaints about this, but I actually really like this. It lets you experience some nice little self-contained stories without the stakes becoming too high. It would have been nice if the characters interacted a bit more, sure, but it doesn't hurt the game too much. The combat itself is fun and is probably one of my more favorite takes on this kind of combat system. The settings, the music, and the atmosphere are gorgeous, almost looking like a pop-up book, and it's quite unique as a result. 9.5 out of 10. The part where I dock the most points is the stupid final boss. Not going to say anything other than it's a pain to get to, awful to fight, and it could have been way better implemented to not frustrate the player. But the rest of the game is fantastic, save for a few small gripes. It's time to smash! Okay, before I start going off on this game, I'm going to say that the best part of Smash Ultimate is the fighters, which is good since they're the main part of the game. All of the characters themselves are fun to play as, and that's the important thing. For the purposes of this video, we're strictly talking about World of Light for now, though. It's nice to have an actual campaign this time around, but this campaign's kind of bad, if I'm going to be completely honest. It's way too long, the spirits are poorly implemented, and it just doesn't feel like an adventure. It just feels like a collection of repetitive fights, which is not good. One of the main reasons people like Brawl's Subspace Emissary so much is it felt like you were traveling all over the worlds they built, platforming through them, fighting smaller baddies, and sometimes solving a puzzle. This just felt like something thrown together in 1 or 2 days when people said they wanted a campaign. Another thing, the amount of cutscenes was incredibly minimal. The other reason why people liked Subspace so much was they got to see their favorite characters interact outside of battles, even if there wasn't any dialogue. It was incredibly disappointing when there was none of that. And then there's the story. It was bad and nothing was explained. Not to mention, there was no real good resolution and there were 2 bad endings. No, just no. Also, going back to spirits, I get what they were trying to do with having fighters representing certain characters with their spirits attached, but I didn't like it at all. It could have been better put into the mode, and there were way too many fights that I felt nothing towards. It's just gimmick, gimmick, gimmick. Quality will always win over quantity. This mode has quantity and nothing else. Sorry to say. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about Smash in general and my disdain towards it in another video, because I do have more to say about this game. 5 out of 10 for World of Light alone. This not including the rest of Smash Bros. Ultimate, just World of Light, okay? I just want to stress that. I think Smash Ultimate is a good game, but World of Light is just bad. It's just bad. Alright, before I start this, a quick disclaimer. I usually try to capture the footage myself and not, download other people's footage. Kind of difficult with this game, so I'm just gonna grab a trailer for this from YouTube or something. Next game up to bat is Hover Revolt of Gamers. It's fun to play, but at the same time, it's not fun to play. Okay, so the mechanics, the platforming, the parkour, the exploring all over the place, that stuff is real good stuff. But the missions themselves, The different kinds of races are fun, the deliveries are good, graffiti missions are nice, but game ball missions are annoying. And there's a lot of them. Blech. Blech. There's also a ton of other objectives that aren't proper missions. They're fun to do, but there's no way to track what you've done and what you haven't, which is aggravating, to say the least. And now for the story. Have you ever seen that meme with the picture of the robot hammering the "No Fun Allowed" sign into the ground? I'll just put that right here. There. That's the story. No, seriously. That's pretty much it. Now, remember what I said when there's no way to track objectives you've done and what you haven't? One of those collectibles is tied to the true ending. Suffice to say, I did not do it. And the bad ending is dumb. There's also a kind of customizable skill tree that you can upgrade your stats with these badges that you get from missions. It was a nice feature. Speaking of customizable things, your character is customizable to it as well to an extent, with unlockable designs for characters. Gonna say this is an 8 out of 10. Play it, just don't aim to beat it. For being inspired by Jet Set Radio, it does a real good job and a not so good job, both at the same time. But like I said, the actual mechanics of the game are fun. Also, quick side note, the music for this is real bumping. Go check out the soundtrack. Everyone has a guilty pleasure game. This is one of those for me. Fair warning, this next game is an anime game. If you do not like anime in any capacity, you can skip to this timestamp to bypass it. This game is something. Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1, mouthful name, I know, is a turn-based RPG set in the land of game industry. It's very much a parody game that's filled to the brim with references to other games, fourth wall breaks, and gratuitous plot, if you catch my drift. The combat itself is fun, though it doesn't do a lot of stuff that's revolutionary for games. I will say I really like the combo and EXE drive skill system though. The best way I can describe the drive skills is eye candy finisher moves, which I always really like in games. The story absolutely does not take itself seriously, which makes the game very silly at points. However, while it's silly, and I like silly, it was a bit wordy in places that could have used less words and still gotten the point across. Regardless, it was a fun, silly story. Lastly, there's the dungeons. They're small and simple, but there's a lot of them. This makes it way less tedious to dungeon dive to get items and enemies for quests than I've seen in other games. But you do get fully healed when you leave a dungeon, so it makes it convenient to grind for levels, items, and money if needed. I didn't know what to expect when I started this game. I simply thought this game looks cutesy and it's a turn-based RPG, which I love. I did not expect quite as much fan service as there was in the game, but that didn't negatively affect my opinion of the game. Though, if you do find that stuff annoying, I might not be able to recommend this game to you specifically. I quite enjoyed my time playing this, though. So, I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10. The dungeon aesthetics and layouts repeat themselves quite a bit, which I do understand seeing as they're small and many. But it doesn't exactly excuse it. This game can also be quite grindy at times, especially if you go for 100%. I did enjoy my time playing it though, and I absolutely got my money's worth for the game. I paid $1 for this and the sequel in a Humble Bundle, and I played, let's see, over 80 hours. Huh, how about that? Gonna try to keep this one short as I don't really have a lot to say about this. To Blob 2. So you're this blob creature thing trying to stop the Devious Inked Corporation, this conglomeration of these inky minion-esque beings, from literally sucking out all the color in the world. You absorb paint colors and touch objects and people to return color to them. The nice thing is you don't need to play the first game to get this game in any capacity. Honestly, this game is pretty darn similar to the first game, only adding a few minor elements into the formula. So if you only play one of the games, there's not really a lot of reason to play the other, unless you really want to. Personally, for me, this was a nice palate cleanser. In a way, it was kind of therapeutic, but it wasn't entirely easy to get through either. 7.5 for me. This game was nice, but it never really wowed me. On top of that, each level felt a bit too long in my opinion. Though that was with doing all quests people saved and environment colored as possible. So if you just wanted to speed through, I'm sure length wouldn't be much of an issue. Still, good game. This game is a quirky little game. It's called Hot Tin Roof, the Cat That Wore a Fedora. I didn't know that this was a Kickstarter game until I booted up, which I guess shouldn't have surprised me as much as it did. Some of the quirkiest games ever made came out of Kickstarter, with this being no exception. This game is a Metroidvania puzzle game with noir detective elements, and a splash of text-based adventure thrown in. It's odd, at the time of writing this, I still don't quite know what to say about this game. I liked it. It was quirky, the dialogue was just the right amount of silly, and the gun upgrades were fun. But it felt painfully short. It doesn't help that it doesn't have a map, which is essential in these types of games. But I guess it is small enough that it doesn't quite necessarily need a map, just would have been helpful. I do like that the whole game actually does have this noir atmosphere about it. It definitely adds to the quirkiness of the game. 7.5 out of 10. As I mentioned, this game's painfully short, and the lack of a map hurts it. If you select the wrong text option, you have to start the whole dialogue tree from the beginning, which is aggravating when you just want to explore. But Hot Tin Roof is overall a fun little diversion with its fun gun options, silly dialogue, and quirky characters. By this time last year, I had beaten 16 new games for the first time. Unfortunately, this year, I have been much busier with various things, so that number has dropped to 7 games. Even if I had doubled last year's amount of games this year, though, I don't think I could possibly top last year's lineup of incredible games. Between the Xenoblade games, Chrono Trigger, A Hat in Time, Final Fantasy VI, Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, yeah, there was no way. But that isn't to say I've disliked this year's lineup so far, except for World of Light, that was complete garbage. I hope that whatever the rest of this year holds can be somewhat memorable, though. Thanks for sticking with me so far, and I hope that you tune in for the end of your reflections when that rolls around. Oh, and Let's Plays and Twitch streams in the meantime. Okay, I'm done. Bye now.